Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Zoom meeting for Learning Life Skills Together. This is the beginning of a little short series on how do we work with the holidays that are coming up. I mean, the winter holidays are a time where we're a little bit off schedule. And, the kids are wondering what comes next and what are we going to do and what's happening. And so it's really up to parents and carers to help set the tone and help make it a really fun, happy time for everyone. But that takes some thinking. And so I have brought along my friend, Christine Moriconi, Dr. Christine Moriconi, who you may know from some other Zoom meetings that we've had. She is a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She is a clinical psychologist. And maybe more important, she's a mom and a grandmom and someone who has spent her career thinking about how we relate to our youth, right? So I want to welcome her with her amazing knowledge and let her sort of drop us into the situation here of the winter holidays.
Thank you, Don. And I am so appreciative of just this time with everyone. Taking a moment out right now to just listen to this speaks volumes. It tells me that you're kind of coming into an openness as to how you want to proceed in your day-to-day life with your child or your teenager over these maybe stressful, sometimes joyful times during the winter holidays. I was kind of walking my dog this morning, and as I was telling Don, it's a crisp day, and I was looking up at the trees and kind of wondering to myself, like, oh, it's getting chilly, it's stark, but it's so beautiful. And oftentimes when I go for these walks, I think of nature as my teacher and looking up to the trees and how they were shedding their leaves, understanding that sometimes in this colder season that the earth seems to come to a stillness, and so nature gives us this opportunity to remind us to stop and just reflect in stillness, to feel and adjust and realign to maybe this moment and who we truly are in this time. Winter's a season of profound meaning in a lot of different traditions, but nature often invites us to slow down and draw ourselves a little bit inward. It also reminds me, Don, of that feeling of coziness and warmth when you come in
Mm.
out of the cold and into the shelter of our homes, and how sometimes we feel a different kind of connection in that warmth. And during the many activities that, we do over some of these holidays, feeling the obligations as well as the joy of it, maybe taking those quiet, warm times to be cozy together. It gives us an opportunity to also connect. So that idea of stillness and connection, and nature gives us that too. But our children, they pop into our lives in so many different ways, right? They're rushing in and asking us for a million things, and you might be busy doing so many things, and they want us to stop and be with them in a moment when you may feel very pressured, as if, the expectations of this season are ominous. are really very difficult sometimes. But we all know that we learn by not only what we do, but how we do it.
Hmm.
Right. So, as a parent of and a grandparent of teens or young children, um, maybe our inclination is to have an automatic response. So, my grandchild, who's 4, might come up to me and say, "Hey, grandma, come see this Lego thing. I want you to see it right away. It's like really important." And I'm in the midst of making something in the kitchen, and it seems as though these two things are in like complete conflict. But
Hmm.
in reality, what I have to do as the parent or the grandparent in the situation right there is to stop for one moment and just maybe breathe into the excitement that's being offered to me in this moment, kind of like that breeze in the trees, that comes to our faces and gives us an awareness of the beauty of that crisp air against our skin. So the child is also that excitement, come, grandma, see this. And I did
Yeah.
went in and
Yeah.
saw the Legos, and then he told me the story of how it was a castle. And I really got into the story with him for even a few minutes. And it made navigating the next activity that I had to do that was in the kitchen a little easier. Like, grandma will be out there in a few minutes, and I really want to see you finish that castle and we can finish our story together. So, the how I approach my grandchild or my child or my,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
And what I was hearing there was meeting that child, where they are rather than where you are. So there's a little pause that we have to put in. The child comes in, says something, there's a beat that we have to take. Okay. And then here connect with their um energy, with what's coming, and it's often a lot of energy, right, coming at us, and to be willing to hear that and be willing to be with that rather than seeing it, as you were saying, as an interruption. I'm never going to get this done. It's like, no, this is why we're here. We're inside. It's, as you say, it's winter, and it's time for, coziness and closer relating, maybe. Yeah. I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
So when I was also, like, just to understand that everyone that's kind of listening to this is their own expert as a parent, because that being in sync with your child or your grandchild or the person that you're, the child that you're caring for, that's where it's at, and this, as you pointed out, Don, being in sync really has an incredible um, gift to give us in that moment, to understand the needs and the demands and the preferences moment, or that teen in that moment, can change our day-to-day experience of that child and of our relationship with our children, our grandchildren. But in all of that, before I was able to kind of like understand that what was important in that moment, I had to kind of stop and take care of myself for a second,
Yeah.
because it was very tempting to just go ahead and say, listen, give me 5 more minutes, I can blah blah blah. And we've all done that.
Right.
Um, so it's a conscious awareness, which is a daily reminder to us of the kindness that we can have towards ourselves, that it's okay to feel rushed as a parent or grandparents. That's okay. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not
That's how it
denying
is.
that we're not in this like frenzy sometimes,
Yeah.
but we have a choice here, as you pointed out, to come into just even a breath or two of stillness for ourselves, to remind ourselves of our own um, wonder in that moment, as opposed to feeling that that moment is a demand. So we can also forge our bonds in a different way to promote a healthy living experience for ourselves and in that kind moment of being still with yourself. And sometimes, you need more than a moment. Sometimes even beginning the day with like an awareness that, okay, like the next 48 hours, we're going to go to grandma so and so's or aunt so and so's for dinner. It may be a little stressful. I haven't seen them in 6 or 8 months. This could be a difficult time. I need to prepare myself and my kids walking into that situation
Mm.
because I can't just treat it as like, oh, it's we're just going out for a walk because I'm stressed.
Yeah.
So my kids or my grandkids might still feel that sense of a stress because we're tuned in, we're in sync, right? So we have that positive sync that we have when we are able to reach into those moments, but also kids pick up our stress. So allowing a moment or two, if we know we can prepare not only our children, but ourselves for these more maybe stressful, maybe joyful, maybe a combination of situations, but that unknowing might be a little anxiety provoking, or like we see that in ourselves. We're like, we can't sleep, we got to get everything done. We're going to travel, that's a whole nother thing. So,
Mhm.
I sometimes think of the small things to do for myself, not only the breath, but maybe even to understand this. The season of winter is kind of a season of stillness, maybe darkness. We just did daylight savings time, so it's like dark earlier. And that idea of bringing a little calm or light into our lives might be useful in terms of just sitting with light. And one thing that I have done for many years, and I'm sure other people, like everybody, kind of does this, is maybe for a dinner or for a special moment, we kind of maybe light a candle, um, just a little candle, and we can sit back and just use those few moments to kind of relax with, with our focus on the light that's coming into us from this experience of light. Sort of like watching the sun come up in the sky early, early, early in the morning. It begins small and grows as if, sometimes I vision that light as sort of like the light within my own heart and sort of having the light come into my own being, Here I see the light and I breathe the light, and the light comes in and kind of encompasses my heart. And just kind of staying with that for even a few minutes before taking a deep breath and blowing that candle out might allow me a few moments to cradle my own kindness within myself. So it's a little tiny bit easier to make those pauses in the
Mm.
journey that I might be going on.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a practice for yourself. You would do this
Yeah.
by yourself. So I'm picturing that also, sort of in the other, maybe in the other direction of I light the candle with the kids. And I can see, and I'm sort of still sticking with you, and I can see that the light is touching them, that the light is touching all of us, you know. So we're kind of inside the circle of the light from the candle. So we're together. We've got that piece that we were talking about of um, here we are. It's winter. It's cozy. We're together. It's just kind of a kind of an acknowledgement of that for the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, it just brought to mind also, like we all have like birthday cakes, birthday candles.
Yeah.
Um, and the winter, we turn out the lights. I don't know if a lot of people do this, but you turn out the lights and then light up the candles,
Oh,
and
of
the
course.
person kind of takes the intention and they make their, what is your wish? What is your birthday wish? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Kind
No.
of like, what is your intention for this day? What is kind of gonna bring out your joy today? And so that's another thing that came to mind when I was thinking about that, when I was brought it into my life. Um, we do have an explicit ceremony that kids are really, really familiar with, and
Yeah.
blowing
Yeah.
out a candle. So you
Yeah.
could like frame it in a lot of different ways depending on the age of the child. Um, so I like your idea of like including everybody in the whole thing. So that might be even a more, inclusive, expansive way of adapting this to an easy 5-minute situation.
I think both those things are great because I think parents and carers sometimes, really do need to take some time for themselves. And, I think that's to do something like that. It sort of sets apart that time. We don't spend a lot of time, with lit candles by ourselves,
No, no,
and
no.
and so to do that in the morning and just say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take in a little light because there's hardly any left in the sky, and
Right, right.
yeah, I'm going to feed myself, so to speak. Yeah, yeah. No, I love that, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different places where we can um apply this, and your creativity as parents and caregivers are like amazing. So there's often just even getting up for sunrise or looking at the sunset or even looking up to the sky and watching the stars in the sky together. Those are all pieces of this theme of like moments of light, that you can either do individually or, together with your teen or your child. I think there's even like, I often look up at the sky at night just for a few minutes. Um, and I never know what the constellations are, but they're beautiful up there. But I never quite have
Right.
never fix of what I'm looking at. And I thought to myself, oh wow, that would be great if I was like able to share this information, like kind of look up and say, oh, that's Orion or something like that to my, to
Hmm.
kids or something like that. So they have all these apps now that you can use,
Right.
that are really kind of magical. But the my grandkids are much more apt at helping me find that
Right.
information out if they're so
Yeah.
inclined. But that's just the idea of wonder and openness really, is the real kind of place that I'm heading for, with us walking down this road of the holiday
Mm.
season.
Yeah. The road of the holiday season.
Yeah,
It is, it,
yeah.
it can feel like a long walk sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, we tend to believe like holidays are like magical times and we shouldn't have any stress, and all these shoulds kind of come up into the conversation of our minds, maybe, of like how things are supposed to look, but
Right.
understanding and taking those moments to understand like what is the feeling that I really need to kind of, what's the feeling coming up for me, or what's the feeling that my kids or my grandkids, what is that feeling that I want to enhance or imbue or leave, uh, with us together. Um, maybe that's the part that gets sort of brushed away
Mm.
in the rush to get to somewhere, but oftentimes in the rush to get to that expectation met, we leave behind the feelings, this
Yeah.
the moments of like um unspoken hurt that might be there. So in an effort to do that, maybe sometimes focusing attention on these moments might help to fortify us as we go through this, maybe the stress of the holidays. Um, for kids, they might be like asked to, wear clothes that are uncomfortable. I remember myself, I mean, I used to have to get dressed up in all kinds of conniptions, dresses, and things like that. And seeing relatives that you don't even know coming up and
Coming at you. Yeah.
at you, kissing you, and like, oh, you've grown
Yeah.
so much, and this is like as a kid, it's a pretty daunting experience sometimes. So, planning ahead to let kids know that there might be some relatives that do that they can um how do they want to feel safe in that situation? So maybe planning ahead would be saying that Aunt so and so might come up and give you a squeeze, and how would you want to handle that? And how can I help you through that? All those kinds of conversations can happen more easily if you're planning ahead. Um,
Mhm.
and giving time for kids to, like, even if they don't have words for what they might be feeling, giving them time to maybe draw out what it might be like to be traveling, what it might be like to um, experience a new activity that they've never done. So maybe not always having a conversation, but allowing creativity to kind of blossom
Yeah.
with that ability right there.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
then
mean,
maybe,
well,
yeah,
yeah. What I'm hearing in that is kind of, you know, there's a there are so many boxes to check off for the holidays for a lot of us. We have to do this, we have to go there, we have to see these people, we have to do that thing. And that has the feeling of being rushed, you know. And it seems to me, my experience of those times is that there's a lot of hurry up and wait in those things. And that waiting part of, okay, well, like in 2 hours, we're going to go to this next thing. And
yeah.
no, it's no, wait a minute. That 2 hours is perfect for what you were just talking about, letting the kids reflect, letting them just veg out maybe, but also to let them process what's happened before in those panting times. Okay, we got there. So now we have a pause until we have to go to Aunt Grace's, and then, oh my gosh. So that it we don't have to see it that way. If we can take a little step back and say, oh, now we have 2 free hours. Now we have 2 hours where we're not doing something. What would you like to do? And you as a parent, how would you like, that what would be the feeling, what would be the way that you would want the kids to experience that time, you know? So maybe it is, okay, let's do a little very quiet project together, or let's light a candle and just sit here. Whatever it might happen to be, so that there's like it's not a constant drum beat. It's like there's quiet and then there's and then there's again, so that we're not feeling worn out. It
Right. I think
might
that,
happen anyway, but
yeah,
yeah.
I think also, like depending on the age of the child and the amount of rush or quiet you need. I mean, you can bring in music to this, you can bring in dance, you can bring in motion. So it doesn't have to be just, sitting quietly. Sometimes when kids
Right.
are like constrained and they have to have certain expectations to say please and thank you and all that other stuff,
Mm,
sometimes it's nice to go to the opposite piece of that experience, which might be like a song that you have picked out as a family, or like that your child likes, that kind of relaxes them a little bit, and maybe just let them feel the experience of moving their body around in a way that they like.
yeah.
you know um I have one granddaughter who's actually, she's a teenager. She's turned 16 today, as a matter of fact. Anyway, what she does all the time are headstands, which are really unbelievable because she's very tall, but she finds it very relaxing and it's also humorous at the same time. So it kind of, you're in the moment with her as she's doing it in these in between times. And
Yeah.
it's a it's
Wow.
a tender time for everybody.
That's literally turning the situation upside down, right?
Right, right, right.
It's like, okay, we were doing this and now we're doing
That's true. That's true.
entirely the opposite. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
terrific.
And then like maybe even switching to a like a sensory experience of like drinking some maybe hot cocoa or peppermint tea or something that like is going to evoke kind of that memory of calmness and quiet, and even telling stories about what that experience was like with Aunt Sally or whatever you were doing. It's a little easier when you're kind of also tending to yourself and kind of quietly kind of sipping on something, or bringing yourself into a little bit of stillness too, so that both things can be happening, like a little movement, a little quiet, a little movement, a quiet, and then to kind of prepare again the path for the next activity if it means that your kids have a lot of adults around them. How do they want to have moments to themselves? When do they tell you that they are feeling very overwhelmed? And that's kind of important to kind of give your child or your teenager kind of a place to know that there's an adult in the room that really gets them. And if they're feeling really overwhelmed, sometimes kids get irritable and angry and they, might have a meltdown or start crying. And maybe in having a conversation to prepare for anything like that, like if you feel really totally overwhelmed, do a timeout, and get my eye contact. I'll be there. We'll take a timeout. So it doesn't always have to be like I have to comply all the time to my external, but I can be aware of what's happening inside and I can help to take care of myself. And if I'm younger, I might need an adult to help me, and my mom or my
Um,
dad or my caregiver, my grandma will be there to kind of help me get to a space where I feel okay again. And I think um, by even acknowledging it, it might kind of cut down on the need because you know that that safety net is there.
yeah,
Um,
no, when you said make that eye contact, that's what really grabbed hold of me, how often we do that, and we do that with, we do that with the people who support us in our lives. If we're somewhere and things are going, things are a little crazy,
yeah.
we'll look over and make that eye contact, and it'll be like, we'll get through this. It's okay. We'll talk about it later, but it's okay. That sense of I'm here, I got you. I like that a lot.
And the other thing is sometimes humor is kind of important to fold in.
Yeah,
So, and I use it a lot, but some people aren't really like, but I think that oftentimes looking at a situation where, say, for example, you're decorating a tree and somebody, it's supposed to be a like a really easy breezy activity, and somebody just doesn't like where something else is going and there's an argument or something's going on.
mm.
Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just stand back and say, wow, this is an incredible tree. It's like much better than, you know, um, the peanuts tree, like, I mean, honestly, or you could, that's not a really funny thing, but I mean, like, you could kind of put a little bit of humor into it. Like, oh, well, I guess it's better than the, I don't know, the dog decorating the tree or something silly. And sometimes I tell like silly things like to kind of with my littler grandchildren to kind of lighten the mood. And it oftentimes ends up that laughter redirects the child's attention to a more positive aspect, or maybe I can use that to divert their attention to another game or an activity that they could enjoy for a minute because people are expecting them to be too particular about certain thing. So no, let's play a game. Let's play a game of, I don't know, colors or whatever, a different activity for them. Um, Sometimes awareness of changing up the activity for our kids is a change in your approach, your mood towards the
Mm.
situation, so that rather than like coming down on the child as you should be behaving so and so, let's take a, you're using your humor to kind of step back and allow the child to find a different activity to do, or take a second look at the problem with you. It also might be important to tell the child or the teenager more what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong. So, for example, doing something right would maybe be um, chewing dinner with your mouth closed. That would be something that maybe you might want to help to have happen for, a 4 or 5 year old, 6 year old child. And rather than telling them to stop chewing with your mouth open, you might even say, "Hey, you look so, if you could close your mouth, we would be able to see your smile a little bit more.
Mhm.
And you look so much better with your, when you're engaged in kind of our norms here." And with my little, well, we were trying to teach my 4-year-old grandson how to not eat his food with his fingers. That was a huge challenge because, French fries are meant to be picked
They,
up with your
they
fingers
are.
and popped into your mouth. So for some things, like with rules like that, they're like confusing for little kids, right? Some things, oh yeah, you can. And some things like, do not pick your peas up with your fingers. So rather than kind of coming to the negative piece of do not do this, you could say you're doing a great job of using your spoon when you pick up the peas. So that's really the point of all of that for even for a teenager. So pointing out the positive as opposed to punctuating the negative. Those are kind of helpful hints to prevent that clashing or maybe increase in irritability that might be
Mhm.
coming up when we're in a pretty constrained social situation, or even in our day-to-day lives with kids.
Yeah.
So I had some ideas also of some activities to navigate conflict when we see them.
Ah,
Um,
terrific.
Coming
Yeah.
into that idea of um, there's different ways of navigating conflict or differences, I call them, with a little one versus like a 4 to 7 year old versus somebody who is like 12 to 16 or 18 years old. I mean, there's a big variability in how we do that. For the little ones, I was kind of pointing out that we're punctuating like the positive behaviors in them. And then how would we do that when we're like looking at maybe a teenager who wants to go out and be with their friends as opposed to going to Aunt Sally's? And why do I have to go on that journey? Has anybody heard
Mm.
of that? And try
Oh,
to navigate those differences.
yeah.
Yeah. So when we hear that request, like what gets evoked in us as a parent? Well, I don't ask you to do too much in this world. I'm only asking this. So that's one initial response that you
Mhm.
might have.
Yeah.
Um, and but where is that child right there? Where is that teenager, right? Is the teenager out the door and with their peers because that's where they feel most comfortable? That's where they feel they belong. That's an easy place for them. So maybe asking like kind of, I know that you really want to be with your friends, so you want to acknowledge like, wow, that this is a hard thing to give up time when you have time off from like your school obligations and your sports obligations and all those other things that kids have to do, teenagers have to do every day. I mean, pretty busy. And having time with their friends is like the primary place that they want to be most of the time. So hearing what they need, hearing what they feel may not change the outcome really. Okay. You might still have to go see Aunt Sally. But what is different in hearing and feeling that child rather than just saying, okay, we're going, get your coat on, we're going in the car. So I think that is really the tricky part. And finding an adaptive way to do that might mean, if you have various ages of kids, to take that teenager aside because you know that, um, kind of working through this might be a little bit more difficult for a teenager than a 6-year-old. And spending time with your child to find out what's really going on might mean a little bit more of an honest conversation with them that doesn't need to be divulged in front of everybody in the family. And
Yeah.
it's a way in which they can feel safe and have that space to do that. Um, and doing it with kindness, okay? Kind of acknowledging, there are rules here, but we love you and we need you in our family. And how can I help you to stay connected with your friends while we're on this visit? What does that mean? Well, maybe that means like a 10-minute break after being there for an hour to go out on the porch and talk with your friends on the phone. Maybe that means some other situation where you allow the other friend to come over for lunch the next day or something like that, so that you can acknowledge that's where the relationship needs to get fostered. And sometimes there's disappointment. Just being there with all those feelings doesn't mean it's not going to feel bad. It might feel disconnected, but you're there to repair and reflect and not to punish. Because just as the winter season gives us a stillness and a reflection time, the stillness and reflection happens within relationships. And even conflict can afford us that peace if we allow the time and space to let it happen. So I think that, um, the pieces that we do with our loved ones are all, making a space for that peace, that connection, that reflection to maybe come to the foreground as opposed to like being in the background of our experience. Letting your child, no matter what age they are, know where you value their being with you as the most important thing. I think that part of it is really the undercurrent of all these kind of ways in which we can address the stress of winter holidays.
Yeah. And so normally, normally at the end of a conversation, I ask our guest for some words of wisdom. I think you've been consistently giving us words of wisdom over our whole conversation. I have a little trouble asking for that. And I want to say that what I'm hearing, I think, is that we go all the way back to how we started this, which is nature is showing us something, in the winter holidays. It's saying, there's the fullness of the sunrise, and then there's the quiet of the evening as it comes on. And so there's like this pulse, and maybe there are ways that we can live within that. Maybe there are ways that we can survive the winter holidays in that way, taking advantage of the slower times for ourselves and for our kids to calm a little bit, maybe, or to let out more if they've just been sitting in Auntie so and so's beautiful living room where you can't touch anything, like, yeah, there's this, sort of on and off, on and off, on and off thing that I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think it has a deep connection to knowing that the adults in a child's life, whoever they are, whether they're caregivers, whether they're parents, whether they're, you know, grandparents, that we know them well enough to adapt and be flexible in the activities that we're doing in our day-to-day life to address their needs, their preferences, that we can change, that we can be flexible, we can be resilient, just as the trees in the winter are resilient. They withstand the cold as
Mm.
well as the warmth of the sun. So we too are like kind of bending and moving even in a time of stillness to adapt our ways to our environment, to our children, to our grandchildren, that experiencing moments of wonder or kindness together will help to forge that resilience and that ability to withstand conflict as well as joy and wonder. And doing activities with kids to kind of punctuate those quieter times, or those moments might be something to consider. I mean, making some ornaments together, or breathing with your child, lighting a candle with them, just snuggling by the fire, or
I was
um,
gonna say, yeah,
yeah,
the little one, just put them on there, put them on your lap, or put them next to you and hold them. You know,
yeah.
both of you need that.
Exactly, exactly. So I think,
Yeah.
and you already know everything. It's just sort of making the space to have that in making space in within the stress maybe of our day-to-day busy lives. And yeah, I'm so grateful and thankful for, as I was telling Don before we started this, to just have the time to spend with all of you, and wishing you and your families all peace, and maybe look up at the night sky occasionally together. And thank you so much for this time together.
Well, thank you for coming on once more and helping us out. And look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.
Thanks.